studying A-level maths is not enough if you want to do well in the Oxford or Cambridge maths interview. Because sometimes, and this is a great example of this, you need a problem, or you're going to get a problem which requires mathematical creativity and requires you to think on the spot, use techniques maybe you haven't seen before. By the way, if you've never seen me before, my name's Jamin and I studied maths at the University of Oxford, and now I help students from all across the globe who are looking to study maths at Oxford and Cambridge get in. This is a really, really nice problem. This is actually a past Oxford University maths interview problem. Some people own a building with several rooms. Each minute, a person leaves a room and moves to another that has at least as many people. Show that eventually all of the people are in a single room. So you've got a building, lots of different rooms, lots of people spread across those rooms, and every minute someone leaves some room and moves to another that has at least as many people. We want to show that eventually all of the people are in a single room. I really encourage you to pause the video now and give this one a go for yourself. And if you're preparing for the interviews, try and explain your answer as well. Treat this as like an opportunity for you to simulate an interview. Anyway, let's have a look. So for this problem, like I say, in an interview, what you want to be doing is laying out your ideas. So you may have a bunch of different ideas as to how to approach this. And once you've laid out your ideas, then I'd go into maybe going about solving it using one of those ideas. I'm going to kind of dive into one of many solutions to this problem, but one which I think is kind of nice. It uses invariants. So an invariant is something that never changes, something that, let me write this word down, invariant. In fact, this is the name of the math society at Oxford. It's called the invariants, on one of the math societies, it's called the invariants. But invariant is a nice technique you can use in maths to solve problems where you notice something that doesn't change. So in this case, we're going to notice something that doesn't change. So every minute, let's say we've just got 5 rooms. We'll call them room 1, room 2, room 3, room 4, and room 5, like so. And maybe room 1 has, and I'll use like maybe like a bar chart kind of to indicate this, has that many people in. Room 2 has that many people in. Room 3 doesn't have many people in. Room 4 has a load of people in. And room 5 has some people in as well. So those are there to represent how many people. So every minute someone leaves from one room and moves to another. Let's say someone from room 2 moves. They'll, in this case, have to move to room 4. And room 4 would get a little bit bigger. And room 2 would get a little bit smaller. Like so. And every minute this is going to happen. And we want to show that eventually everyone's in the same room. So at the moment, no one's allowed to leave room 4. But it could be, in theory, that maybe, room 3, they move to room 2, room 1 people move to room 2, and room 5 move to room 2, making this tower taller. And then people could move across here as well. So it's not the case that eventually everyone's going to end up necessarily in room 4. So, okay, let's just get rid of all these annotations. What's this invariant? What's the thing we're going to spot? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say let P1, P2, and so on, Pn be the n people. So we've got n people here, and they're spread across the rooms. And what we're going to consider is we're going to say let Fi of t equal the number of people in room I, in the room with I in, with person I in. So for example, let's just imagine we have P1, P2, and P3 in there. Then F1 of 0, so at time, sorry, I should have made it clear, at time t. So F1 of 0, that's going to be the number of people in the same room as person 1 at time t equals 0. So at time t equals 0, person 1 is in room 1, and there's going to be 3 people with them there. And so let's say I had person 4 in here, as well as, let's say, and then plus 6 other people. I can say that F4 of 0 is 7, because person 4 is in a room with 7 people in, so we're including that person. Now what can we say is that the sum from I equals 1 to n of fi of t, so this is going to equal r1 of t squared plus all the way up to r5 of t squared. Why is this? Well, if I do f1 of t, so f1 of t, that's going to be 3. But also f2 of t will be 3 and f3 of t will be 3 as well. So I'm going to get 3 lots of 3, so 3 squared. So however many people are in room 1, that number squared will give me the first kind of contribution in this sum. Then when I look at the next people, all of these guys will be contributing 7, so that's going to be plus 7 squared, and so on. So the sum from I equals 1 to n of fi of t equals this. And maybe I'll call this function here g of t, like so. Now, the idea, one other thing I can say is I also know that at any time, the sum of the ri's from 1 to 5, that's just going to be equal to n. If you're just adding up the total people in all the rooms, it's always going to be equal to n. Now you might be thinking of maybe some kind of Cauchy-Schwarz stuff or something along those lines here. We don't really need to do anything like that, but maybe there's an approach that way. The way I'm going to do this is by noticing something about the function g of t, and that is that g of t is an increasing function. How do I know that? Well, the way I'm going to show that is not by differentiating or anything like that, is by considering g of t plus 1 and comparing that to g of t. So when we go from one unit of, or one moment in time to the next moment, a person has moved from one room, let's say from r2 of t to r4 of t, just for example. And so g of t plus 1 is going to be r1 of t plus 1 squared plus all the way to r5 of t plus 1 squared. But notice that apart from r2 and r4, the other three are unchanged. So this is just going to be r1 of t squared plus, now r2 will go down by 1, so it'd be r2 of t minus 1 squared plus r3 of t squared plus r4 of t plus 1 squared, and then plus r5 of t squared, like so. And now if we go about expanding these three, well sorry, those three stay the same, but if we expand these other two, we're going to get g of t minus, plus 2 plus 2 r4 of t minus r2 of t, like so. And the idea is that this is strictly bigger than g of t, because this thing here is strictly positive, and this thing here is non-negative, because r4 of t, because the rules of the game, just scroll up again, is you had to move to a room that has at least as many people. So r4 of t must be strictly bigger than or equal to r2 of t. So g of t plus 1 is bigger than g of t. But, so that proves that this function here is increasing over time. So no matter what happens, no matter how the people move, the invariant is this expression will always be increasing. But of course, this can't increase forever because, well, there's a limit, right? The biggest, and that's essentially what we want. We want to know what's the biggest that this sum can be, and that will be the kind of maximum value. That's when we'll stop, and when do we stop is once everyone's in the same room. And this essentially proves that everyone will eventually be in the same room, because we can't continue this process indefinitely, because if we could, then that would mean that g of t would grow arbitrarily, but g of t definitely does have an upper bound. A very, very silly, trivial upper bound is it's 5 times n squared, because each of these ri's are at most n, because they add up to n, and so this is going to be at most 5n squared. But you can definitely do better than that in terms of an upper bound. I think in fact you can just make this n squared, by making 4 of them 0 and the other one n. But that proves that everyone will eventually be in the same room. Now, I deliberately did something slightly different in this video. I didn't really motivate many of the ideas. And I wanted to kind of illustrate the difference. Hopefully, and this sounds a bit weird, hopefully in this video compared to my other ones, you're a little bit more confused. And this was to illustrate something that's really important in the interview. When you are giving your explanation, it is not enough for you to just understand the concept or you to understand where you're going with your proof. Remember, you're not speaking for yourself, you're not writing for yourself, you're not writing for me, you're not writing for your teacher, you're writing for the 2 interviewers who are in that room with you. So it is your responsibility to make it as crystal clear as possible, not just what you're writing at that very second, but also the direction in which your proof is headed, why you're doing the steps you're doing, and motivating the ideas that you have. And that's going to make it a lot clearer for them to understand, but also for you to convince them that you are a strong mathematician. Nonetheless, this is a super, super awesome problem. There are a bunch of different solutions to this, so I encourage you to explore this. In this problem as well, you might be thinking there are a couple of steps. It's like, well, how would I even motivate that? Well, in an interview for sure, if you did get stuck or you kind of hit a brick wall, they would, poke you. They might say, okay, cool, well, let's consider this seemingly random function. And then they might ask you to tell them what you think about this function, and or what you can work out about this function. Maybe you might discover that it's increasing as well, or they can give you some more hints for you to kind of work that out yourself. But this is a really cool problem, I think. And invariance is a really nice topic that they like to ask about, problems where you use invariance as a technique to solving is a super common topic that you'll see in interviews, because you don't really do it at A level. You don't really even see it in the MAT that much, or TMUA or STEP even. So it's a really cool technique, it's a really good way to challenge students. So I'd highly encourage doing lots of problems on invariance. Anyway, I'll finish there for today. I'll leave a video on screen where I solve another problem using a similar technique. I'll catch you over there.